from stampingjoe.com, and welcome to this week's Stamping 411. So for the products that I've chosen this month, they are exclusive to this month only. So we are November 2018. We just celebrated Halloween yesterday. We had a great time. I collected my candy for my mummy tax from my kids. And now I am ready to get things rolling for this month. I'm super excited about this collection of products that Stampin' Up! Has come out with this month. They are so much fun, and if you love snowflakes, you are going to love these. Okay, so I'm going to be focusing this month on Snow is Glistening. So this is one of the new stamp sets exclusive to November that has come out. We have the trinkets as well. So these trinkets are snowflake trinkets. They are 20 beautiful metal snowflakes. There is two different designs. So you can see we have, of course I can't find them now. Oh, these two. There you go. And they have beautiful little rhinestones in the middle of them. So beautiful, beautiful trinkets that you can use. I can see these actually used for jewelry as well as card making. You can make earrings. You could make this like on a bracelet. You could do it on a necklace. And so they are super fun when you can use them in different ways. But this month, we're probably only going to use them in card making unless I get really creative and try and figure out some kind of other project with it. Okay, so that is one of the products. So you've got two here. The other product that Stampin' Up! Came out with this month, I don't know if they're going to carry this over into the new catalog, but it is super cool. It's white velvet sheets, and they are 12 by 12. Okay, and they are super soft. I know you can't see that on the video, how soft they are, but they are so cool, and I'm really excited to make something fun with those. We're not going to use that one this week, but I will show you something next week that uses these velvet sheets. We also have some really cool snowflake thinlits that you can use in your big shot, and I'll be using those next week as well. So let's get started with this week's card. I had a lot of fun creating this card. There is some beautiful colors that I was able to select from. I played around with different combinations, and I love this one. We're using our glossy paper, and we did a heat embossed resist. So I'll show you how to do that. We're using some fabulous colors. You can see that we're using Blackberry Bliss as our background card, and that one is cut to 5.5 by 8.5. Next, we have our Blueberry Bushel color, and this one is gorgeous. It's one of our newer colors, and it goes so well with that Blackberry Bliss. This one was cut to 4 by 5.25. Next layer is going to be our glossy white cardstock. So that one is cut to 3 3/4 by 5. We also have a vellum piece of cardstock that was cut to 3.5 by 1.25. And then for the inside of our card, we have another Whisper White cardstock that is cut to 4 by 5.25. The first step always is to fold your card. So I'm just going to use my bone folder to do that. So we're just going to always start off your paper, finish off your paper, makes that nice crease. I'm just going to use my snail adhesive, and I'm going to put my blueberry bushel, I keep trying to mix up those names, as my first layer. And then really I'm going to set that aside because the next one is going to be a really fun technique, and you're going to love it. So like I said before, we're going to do a heat emboss resist technique on this. Because it's glossy paper, you don't want to get the oils of your fingers on there because it's going to stick to that embossing powder. And so make sure your hands are clean before doing this, and try not too much to put your fingertips on it. We're going to use the embossing buddy, and that just adds a tiny little bit of powder onto your paper. so that it resists the static and has that embossing powder going to where you actually want it to be. So for the first step, we're just using the largest snowflake and then the smallest snowflake. And you may find sometimes when you get your photopolymer stamps that they have kind of a little covering on them. And sometimes it's good to prime your stamps. I have my big giant eraser that I use. And all you're doing is you're just kind of erasing that film that might be on top of it. Once it's erased, you can take off those little eraser marks by using that on your Simply Chamois. So you can see mine is really well loved. I'm just going to go like this to make sure that all those little bits of eraser have come off. I'm going to be using my Versamark ink pad with my clear embossing powder. Now you can use white as well, but surprisingly I didn't have any white embossing powder, but it works just as well with the clear. So because Versamark is a clear ink, you can use it to do like watermarks on a colored cardstock. So you would just literally stamp it and stamp on here, and you would have, actually I can do that because it's going to be in the middle. So you can see if I stamp that on here, it darkens. Oh, it's kind of tough in this light to see, but it will darken it to add just a little bit of a darker impression on it. As it dries, it tends to show up a little bit better. But on the glossy cardstock, you're not going to see it as well. So I did it kind of in two steps. So I'm going to ink that up and start kind of at the top and pay attention to where you're stamping, okay? Because we're going to fill in those steps, those little spots after with a smaller one. So after I do all the large ones, the large snowflakes, I'm going to take my powder. Now I always put my powder in these larger containers, that way I can just tap it off. If you don't have them in larger containers, just put like a scrap paper underneath that you can fold in half and then just dump your powder back into your original container that it comes in. So we're just going to completely do that. Tap off your powder, and you can see now where I've stamped those big snowflakes. So I'm going to go back in with my smaller snowflake, and I'm going to fill in some of those spots. Once I have all those small ones done, I'm going to do the same thing with my powder. Then once I have all of those covered, I'm going to heat set with my heat tool. Now that I have some of those smaller ones, I can still see that there's a few spots that I want to fill in. So I'm just going to do this a third time. I found just that this was the easiest way. Instead of trying to figure out where all my snowflakes were, just do it in steps and then add your powder. Just make sure that you don't put your fingers on the powder that's already there, because you're going to start to knock it off. Sometimes if you find there's powder in between your images, you can just take a small little like paintbrush and just knock that powder off. To be honest, in this one, I didn't bother getting my paintbrush out just because I don't mind those little specks. It actually kind of looks fun onto the finished product. So I'm going to take my heat tool and show you what it looks like when it starts to melt. I don't know if you're going to be able to see it in the video, but I hope so. So let's try. Once you've done some of them, just turn your paper around so you don't burn your fingers. Our heat tool is extremely hot and it can burn pretty easily, so just be very careful. So you should be able to see now that I have a gloss where all of those snowflakes are. So here comes the fun next step. We're going to be using some of our Stampin' Sponges. I've cut these into wedges. Some of these my actual 11-year-old daughter cut into wedges for me, so they're not exactly as big as I would have liked. But we're going to use 3 different inks. We have Blueberry Bushel, Blackberry Bliss, and Balmy Blue. And so I'm going to use one of the Stampin' Sponges per ink pad. So just a tip before starting this step, I actually made sure that after using my embossing powder that I cleared off my background paper of all of that powder, because otherwise you're going to get powder into each ink pad by rubbing that. So we're going to start from darkest to lightest. So I've put them in the order that I want them to be. So Blackberry Bliss, Blueberry Bushel, and then Balmy Blue on that side. We're going to take our Stampin' Sponge, and you're just going to grab some ink on there. I always tap off a couple of times on my scrap paper just to get that initial harshness off. And then you're going to take it and you're going to start to add that color. And I like to go in circles. Just, it kind of softens the color a little bit. And see how like that color is popping there? It is so much fun to do this. And you can definitely do this in different color combinations. So even if you don't have these colors at home and you have some embossing powder, you can do this with other colors. So don't worry. I've seen it with pinks, and yes, snowflakes with pinks are really fun. Even though they're not traditional, they're fun colors to play with. So with this, once you have that color on, you can go back and just take, I actually just have toilet paper because I didn't have any anything else to use for this, no paper towels. And you can go back and it starts to remove a little bit of that color from the embossed section. It still kind of looks messy, but we're going to go back and soften it after. I'm just going to start with my next color, so the Blueberry Bushel, and just overlap a little bit. And again, do your circles. Look how fun that is. Those two colors pop so nicely together. Again, go back with your tissue or your paper towel and start to take some of that color off of the snowflakes. And then I usually turn it around so I can do this side. If you're left-handed, you probably would do it the other way, but it's just easier to have it in this direction if you are right-handed. Back in, we're going to do our lightest color now. And once you have all your colors on, you can go back in and just kind of do a little bit around the kind of the spot where they meet, just to make them kind of go together a little bit better without those harsh lines. I'm going to take that one, then on this one I'm going to do Blackberry Bliss. Look at how pretty that is. Can you see that color? Oh, I love it. All right, so we just have a few more steps to go. So we're going to take our snail adhesive and just glue that to our card. So now that that's done, our last step is to take some vellum cardstock. So vellum cardstock is actually thicker than a paper would be. It has a little bit more density to it, and it's really nice to stamp on. So I'm going to pull back in my Blackberry Bliss, and I have the wrong stamp. Hold on, I'm just going to change it back up. Actually, the stamp that I have on there right now is for the inside of the card. So let's actually do that step. We're going to change our mind here. So this is for the inside of the card, and it has the Merry Christmas to you and peace on earth to all the world greeting. So we're just going to stamp that about there. And then the medium-sized snowflake, I actually used at the bottom just to do a pattern and make it kind of match the rest of our card. So I've stamped the inside, so I might as well just glue that in. And then I switched the greeting on my block, so now we can do the vellum right after. So look at how pretty that looks on the inside, especially since it's a really dark cardstock. It's going to be hard to write on, so it's nice to do this layer inside of white. So pulling back in our vellum, we're going to do, this one says, each snowflake is beautiful, sparkling, and special, just like you. Sorry, I couldn't even read the last word. So we're going to take that and we're going to stamp it. You kind of want to stamp it near the middle. Make sure you press down in the middle to make sure it all gets nice and inky. And we're going to pull back in our clear embossing powder. On your vellum cardstock, it will dry eventually, but you'd have to be a little bit more patient than I am sometimes. You can also use your heat tool just to dry that ink if you want, if you would rather do that than emboss it. But What's fun is that with clear embossing powder, you can pretty much make any color embossing with your ink pads because they stay pretty wet. So we're going to heat that up again. So now that that's heat embossed, it actually has some texture to it, which is really fun. It's probably hard to see that on the camera, but in real life you can totally see it. And the biggest problem with vellum is how to glue it down, right? Because adhesive will show up. If I was to use snail or something under here, you would see it when I put that on my paper. But I have a couple of tricks. So the first thing that we can do is figure out our trinket. So I always like to put something on the vellum where I can actually put a trinket on it, and then underneath the trinket or the stamped image or the punched out shape or whatever it is that you're doing, or even like a little bit of ribbon, you can put that either a glue dot or some kind of glue underneath. And so that's one of your sticky spots. Now, how to glue this side where I don't want to have anything on it. So this is where we're going to use our snowflakes, okay? We're going to use our fine tip glue pen, which dries clear, which is really nice. When you use the fine tip glue pen, make sure you put that lid back in because it has this little needle part where it goes inside. If you don't get that back in, and I talk from experience here, it can clog up and you may never be able to unglue that without a lot of work and hot water. So always make sure to put this lid back on after you use it. But we're going to use our snowflake shapes here, and we're going to put some glue in the middle of our snowflake shape, okay? Now we're going to take this and we're going to carefully lay it down on top. And this is where patience is a virtue, so get it in your spot and then hold it there for a few minutes or put something on it. So like you can even put your trinkets and your snail and just let it sit there for a few minutes while it dries, okay? Usually this type of glue, if you're doing it really thick, can take up to like an hour sometimes if I'm doing it really, really thick. But it does take a little bit to dry. It's not instant, okay? So, because I'm on video, I'm gonna make this go a little quicker. I'm gonna take one of our glue dots to put the trinkets on. So, when using the glue dots, there's always that layer that goes on top, and what that does is it protects those glue dots from sticking onto other things. So, I see a lot of people wanna like uncover it and then tear off that part. Keep this right on top of your glue dots so that you don't attach those dots to anything else. So put your trinket on it, okay, and then just kind of twist it off so that it's underneath. And we're going to take that and we're going to place it on and give it a press. Now, I took a second glue dot for this. Let's see where I can find one. Okay, so we're going to take that second glue dot and we're going to pull this up. And I'm going to put it behind that trinket as well, right there, pretty much in the same spot, and press it in. So now you've pretty much hidden that glue. This spot here will dry, and even if it shows up a little darker, because it's in the middle of that snowflake, it won't be bothersome. It won't look weird, okay? So there you go. I hope you liked this technique and these products, and remember, they are only available for this month. So if you love snowflakes and you are looking for something like this, definitely get it sooner than later because they are first come, first serve as well. I don't know how many they actually have, but they're while supplies last and or this month. Okay, so thanks so much for watching, and please, if you like these videos, give me a thumbs up, give me a comment, and let me know what you think. Have a great day. Bye.